Hey friends, welcome back to another episode of Work Matters, where we take some time each month to get to know a member of our church and hear a little bit more about the integration of their faith and their work. We get to know them. One of our goals here is to know and to be known, and also just to be encouraged at what God is doing among those who are part of our church. So this month we have the privilege of having Paul Robbins with us. Paul, thank you for joining us, brother.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, man. Well, let's dive right in. Paul, tell us a little bit about yourself, just your personal background. Like, where are you from? Maybe give us a picture of what it was like growing up there.
Sure. I'm from Little Rock, Arkansas. That's where I grew up until I went to college, and it was a pretty good childhood, a good place to grow up. I was kind of a lower middle class upbringing, and my dad was a truck driver, and but he sought to raise me in the wisdom and instruction of the Lord, and I think he did that well for my sister and I have one younger sister. He would tell me stories of how he would witness on the CB radio while he was driving his truck and just share his faith with other truck drivers, and the wide range of responses he got. But I realized later on in life that kind of normalized something that I've come to learn is not that normal, and that's just expressing your faith and the reason for the hope you have in normal conversation with anybody you encounter. And I kind of grew up thinking that's just sort of what you did at work, and later on kind of saw like that's not how everybody operates. And he would tell me how like sometimes he'd get called on the carpet for people being upset about things he would say, and he kind of wrestled with that. But the ultimate sense I got from him was like, I kind of, here I stand, I can do no other. This is part of who I am and how I am, and I want to be respectful of my employer, but I also want to share the good news with people that need to hear it. So anyway, that's some of my kind of upbringing and family life. I went to school in Arkansas, in Arkadelphia, Arkansas, and then did some additional school after that, and then entered the workforce.
Yeah, so you've touched on this already. So cool to hear the story about your dad, the example. I love how you phrased it. He normalized something for you that you later learned is unfortunately not very normal, not very common. Maybe digging into that just a little bit, but maybe a step back also. How did you come to faith in Christ?
I actually don't have a time where I thought before this moment I was an unbeliever, and after this moment I was a believer. It was more of a, I don't know if even gradual is the right word. I mean, I grew up in a Christian home and understood the gospel at a young age. Was baptized as a child, and was always in the church. But it wasn't till college that my faith shifted to being my own, whereas it's like no longer my parents or my pastors. I started to claim it as my own, and began to see Jesus in a new way, in a personal way, as my Savior and as my Lord and King. And I was challenged a lot in good ways and in difficult ways in college. I had a guy that discipled me that was a campus minister that really had this delta of growth spiritually then, where I grew and I practiced spiritual disciplines and kind of knew what those were. It's when I really started to have a quiet time with God and pursue Him on my own. And at the same time I was challenged. I was in a little work study job that a guy would write down these challenges to the Christian faith on index cards and slide them across the table and be like, how do you answer that? And he was pretty fired up about jumping into those conversations. And some of the things I came equipped, kind of ready to answer and provide a reason for what I believed, and others I'd never encountered before. So I had to go back to my dorm room and fire up my computer and just search for answers and like look for, well, what does the Bible have to say about this? What have other thoughtful people concluded about these kind of questions? And I had to adjust some of the things I had learned, but ultimately the result of that whole exploration was a confirming of my faith and a deepening of my faith. I came out the other end of it having been challenged, but deciding there are credible, robust answers to the most difficult questions thrown at the Christian faith. And as I read them and came to understand them, I was satisfied intellectually, and God was already working me on a heart level, and I kind of just enjoyed the conversation with the fella, even if he was antagonistic. It was a pleasure just to engage. And this one thing my dad said one time was, sometimes the most ardent atheist that's fired up is someone that is best to encounter and engage with and have conversation with, because at least they are engaging with important matters. They are encountering ideas that have them fired up, but it means there's a discussion to be had, and there's at least an openness to talking about it, even if it's from different viewpoints. But like, welcome those conversations. Don't run away from them.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's kind of coming to faith, being challenged, and then coming out of that sort of reaffirming what I was given as a child. And then now it's more about aligning myself with Christ and seeking to align my life with what is most important as He defines it. And that's an ongoing sanctifying process.
Yeah. Yeah. Amen. How did you end up here at the Bible Church, and maybe even prior to that, how did you end up in the Triangle?
Well, I first came here to take a position. This was like 13 years ago now, and I was laid off at my previous position, last job, and then looked around at different places and ended up coming here, and have been here at the same place for that whole time, and have gone to a couple of churches, and eventually kind of through around COVID time, we started looking for a church and found the Bible Church, and visited several and ended up sticking here.
That's awesome, man. Well, I'm glad you guys are here. I know you guys are currently going through the membership process, and we look forward, if you pass the test, to you
Studying.
To you guys, to you guys joining the church. Well, let's dive into to your work and faith and intersection of that. Tell us a little bit about the industry that you are in. Maybe give us a little bit of context of what it's like being a Christian in that industry.
Sure. I'm in the entertainment industry broadly, and a video game developer specifically. And you probably have an idea of what the entertainment industry is like as it relates to faith, and it's not always a friendly environment, but at the same time, it's filled with people, and people, no matter what industry they're in, have struggles and difficulties, and they're made in the image of God, and they're worth pursuing and getting to know, and so it's not like the broad posture of entertainment towards Christianity has been an impediment to living and working as a believer in this industry. So it's really fertile ground. It's an opportunity.
Are there any any ways that you think are maybe unique to your industry that you see, hey, these are particular ways that the fall has impacted. God desired joy and entertainment to be such a way, and my industry overall presents it in X way.
hmm Yeah, I think there's different ways the fall has affected the work I do and my industry. It's sort of like uh, it's like anything can be distorted. Entertainment can be distorted. It's not wrong in and of itself, but you can have too much of a good thing, and too much video games is harmful. There's a right amount, an appropriate amount of any form of entertainment, and then there's destructive effects if it's overdone, and and at the same time it's there's harmless enjoyment as well, if done in the right way. So another thing is I manage people, and there's definitely been challenging experiences there. I've just had difficult situations in navigating, whether it's performance or just I don't know, behavior that you kind of have to work through, that's ultimately evidence of the fall. Sometimes work is harder than it has to be, like kind of the toil aspect of the fall. It's not the work itself that is broken, but the manifestation of the fall in that it doesn't have to be, well, as God originally intended it. It doesn't have to be as difficult and challenging as it is. So, and throughout my career, I've seen people push different agendas that are antithetical to a belief in God, and that's a challenge to navigate at work, and it's kind of part of being a faithful believer in the workplace, is walking through that tactfully and graciously, and holding on to your convictions.
I'd love to unpack that a little bit more. What advice would you give to people listening, just from your personal experience, from biblical convictions? You're faced with we all, we all are, right? You got a situation and your convictions are tested. How do you lean into those in a way? I think you said tactfully. How do you do it in such a way that honors those around you, honors your employer, but still you're being led by your principles and convictions that are rooted in Scripture?
Yeah, I think the first thing is to know what your convictions are, and be rooted in what is true. And for a follower of Jesus, that's understanding what the Bible has to say about any given topic. And that's kind of what I've needed to do, is just turn to the Scriptures and derive for myself what I understand God to be saying to me in the Scriptures. And from there, it's deciding, okay, if this is what I believe, how do I apply that in any given situation? And that will look differently. A couple of general principles I would say is get to know the leaders in your organization and understand the way it works and operates, and kind of the culture. And utilize them as a resource to understand how you navigate your work as a believer. And maybe not everybody even feels comfortable having those conversations, but it's probably better to discuss that openly rather than it needing to come up uncomfortably, unexpectedly at some point. If you can broach that topic and just not in a, like, it's important, I think, not to say, you know, I demand my right to be heard as a Christian and my viewpoint to be put out there. Be more respectful and have a posture of, I understand there are varying viewpoints in an office. There always will be, and I'm seeking to learn and understand other folks' viewpoints, and I'd like to offer respect and also be respected. Just the dignity of a person is upheld both ways. And I think that being a goal is laudable and a worthy pursuit for someone of any belief system. I think we can have common ground there with anyone. So getting to know leaders and understanding them and talking openly and advocating for mutual respect, and then one thing that I got from reading Daniel, just the first chapter or so, is the way he approached a situation where he was confronted with something that went against his conscience. Is he said he went to the person in authority over him and he asked the question, could I do this differently? He didn't march in and demand his rights. He said respectfully, is this a possibility? And the person in authority over him had some concerns, and Daniel's kind of put those at bay a little bit, and he provided an alternative solution. It turned out to be a better one. It worked well for everybody. It's like having that kind of winsome approach is what we all ought to aspire to, and I don't always achieve it, but that's what I desire. That's what I want, is to approach it with some nuance and a desire for the good of my company and the good of my employer. How can I seek to achieve both the good of my organization, the flourishing of it, and the maintaining of what I hold to be true for myself? How can we achieve that? And that's, I'm certainly interested in doing that well and talking about that with other folks.
And that's really helpful, Paul. I've been reading through Daniel myself recently, and so what you're talking about is fresh on my mind. And even just that concept of, like, go to your employer respectfully, and then also offer a solution that is best, right? I think it's really easy for us to go to those in authority with the problems, right? And I think it's received very differently when we approach it with a, hey, here's an issue I see, here's a possible solution that I think would be really good for everybody. What do you think?
That's great. It's our natural temptation. It's my natural temptation to just present the problem because I don't have the answer, and here's the issue. And if we take it on ourselves to at least think through what possible solutions there could be and then present them and some reasons why you think they'd be a good solution, that serves your leaders well, and it's you taking some ownership and responsibility for the problem, and they appreciate that, and it goes a long way to you communicating with your actions and your words that I care about this organization doing well, and I'm part of a problem solving mentality, and I'm gonna seek to bring value to this and not just present a problem. that you have to solve.
So one of the things that a lot of people in the faith and work movement talk about, and I agree wholeheartedly with this, is that work is one of the ways that is one of God's instruments for refining us. He uses our work as a sanctifying tool. We know that work is a good thing, created before the fall. It was an act of worship. We know there will be fruitful work in the new creation as well. We live in this in-between time right now where our work is laborious and it's toilsome and it's difficult and there are thorns and thistles, right? But even in that, God is working to refine us, to sanctify us, and to build in us hope of future glory. Can you maybe share a little bit of what that's like for you in your work? Like how does your work actually help you fix your gaze on Jesus, on future hope, and how is He using that to refine you, to turn you more into the likeness of Christ?
Sure. The biggest way that is happening for me right now is it actually maybe has less to do with the work itself, and if the work was removed, which maybe is the opposite of what you're asking, but I've been like, God has been prying open the grip I have on my livelihood in my heart, and teaching me. He's been helping me know that He is sufficient, and that He ultimately is taking care of me as His child, and that it's actually not my work that is providing security and safety for myself and my family. As much as I feel that way, and am apparently hardwired to think that is true, God's helping me see that that's not ultimately true. And the consideration of, well, what if my work was removed from me? Would I be okay? And I mean, ultimately, I'd probably find another job. I'd find some way to provide for my family. But just that openness to the idea, not running away from it, is helping me rely on God for sustenance, and trusting that He will provide. And honestly, it's not even a guarantee in this world that He'll provide. It's the guarantee is that He provides eternally, and resting in that, being okay with that, like countenancing that, and it being all right. If I keep my job, God is good. But then later in Daniel, I've got this I saw this and I had to grab a little plaque. It says, it's Daniel 3:18. If I keep my work, it's good. But if not, here it is. And if not, He is still good. It's like if I can accept that as true, then it's kind of like, come what may, I'm good. I'm good ultimately, and that is a refining work in this soul that God has been doing, and I pray He continues it. I don't think I'm all there. I've got like a pinky still held on, at least a pinky, to my livelihood, but I know what He's doing is good, and I trust He'll continue to shape me into His likeness.
Brother, that's good, man. Thank you. That's really encouraging. Bonus question for our listeners. Mm-hmm. Not one on the list.
Is this like a paid subscriber section of the podcast?
Yeah, that's okay. Right. Yeah, you will be cut off, but wait, click here for more access.
Exactly.
Being in the video game industry, I'm just curious. Do you have any advice for parents and how to help their kids think about, playing video games, and how to set healthy boundaries, how to have conversations? Any thoughts you could share with us from your perspective?
Yeah, I've thought about that a lot. Well, there's kind of two extremes. One is don't think that all video games are all bad, and the other is don't think video games are just harmless and you could let your kids play whatever and however much they want. On the first side, I had this experience with my oldest son when he had to have only been like 6 or 7. We were playing the Nintendo 64 Zelda Ocarina of Time, and there's this part where you're jumping off a cliff into some water, and you have to retrieve so many rupees, little gems, from the bottom of the water before the timer runs out and you come back up to the surface. And so he did that, and he only got like 3, and he's supposed to get like 50 or something. And he tried it again, and he got like maybe 7, but he's really frustrated. And he was like, "Dad, can you do it?" He tried to hand me the controller. I was like, "No, stick with it. You're getting a little bit better. Try it again. That's how this works: is you practice it and you get better, and you keep going, and then you'll get the thing you're working towards." And so he did it a few more times and got frustrated, but he kept getting closer, and he finally got it. And I was like, "All right, pause the game. Let's talk about it just a second. What just happened? You had some perseverance. You encountered frustration. You kind of wanted to give up, but you kept going. And because you kept going and you stuck with it and you endured, you got better and you practiced and you achieved the goal that you set out to achieve." That's a significant thing. It is like a video game provided that life lesson for my son. And a key, I think, was I was there playing it with him. I don't know that he would have got that if he would have gone and done something else in the game. So that's one thing. He would have just thrown the controller at the TV, and that's what, like, play games with your kids. If they're into games, you can have that kind of opportunity as long as you're there and you're present and you're engaging with your child. That there are great opportunities for that. And on the other side, my oldest child is 11. I don't know if this gets harder as they're older, but we certainly limit the amount of time they play with games and the types of games. And we're not even into like online, navigating the world of whoever else is out there that wants to talk to my kid. Like those are real concerns to address. And I think it's really, I hope parents feel, I don't know if empowered is the right word, but that they can dictate that for their kids, that they shouldn't let their child's ability to be disciplined about something that has the potential to suck up all of their extra time. Don't let that be the determining factor for how much they engage with games. Like you have to provide that structure for them. Lord willing, they eventually internalize that and it becomes a habit, and your providing of the structure sets them up to be disciplined on their own in the future. But we're certainly not there yet, and I don't know if that happens before. I had to reach a time in college where I was like, I'm either going to be good at video games or I'm going to make decent grades, but I don't think I can have both. So while my roommates were playing fighting games in the common area, I just had to decide I got to go study. And like that's what you want for your child, is to eventually be able to make that decision. And right now, if your kids are at home, it's likely they can't make that decision on their own, and you've got to provide that for them. So a couple thoughts. I could share more, but that's enough bonus unless you've got a super subscriber lounge.
Next episode, we roll that out.
There you go.
Paul, thank you, brother, for your time, man. Really appreciate you. Appreciate the humility that you bring to your work, your dependence on Christ, your strong conviction on His provision for you and for your family. That's really encouraging. that ministers to me when I hear you say that, as a fellow dad, right?
Awesome.
And thinking of taking care of my family. And thanks for the wisdom too, and like helping us navigate these waters with our kids. And yeah, I think some people's inclinations could be all or nothing, right? Super permissiveness or prohibition when it comes to that, and to find that balance and to actually use it to teach our kids. One thing I was just thinking about as you mentioned you playing with your son is one thing that I think that opportunity provided you guys with is it compressed the amount of time in which it would typically take, I think, to go from failure to success from such a broad range, right? That might be in real life, that might be something more like months and months, right? But this provided an opportunity for, like, in a few minutes, however many it was, for you guys to go from 0 to 60 and to have that conversation in a way that he could understand. So yeah, that's really encouraging to think through. So
that's great. A quick book recommendation on this is The Tech-Wise Family by Andy Crouch. Maybe some of your listeners have read that, but it's not video game specific, but it is around the broader notion of technology and your family's use of it and awareness of it and how you structure your life. It really helped me shape the way I view all this now, and he does it in a really enjoyable way to read and digest.
Wonderful. Well, brother, thank you for your time. God bless you in your work and in your parenting, and we really appreciate you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I need it. Thank you.
All right, brother. Bless you.